Why Christian Nørgaard to Arsenal does make sense. That's right, we finally have some transfer activity news. Arsenal £15 million paid to Brentford for their captain Christian Nørgaard. In this episode, I'm going to talk about exactly why I think it makes a ton of sense to sign this player, why some of the reaction online has been very, very dramatic and over the top, and talk about some other players that Arsenal are in for right now, which could help us win the title next season. This is Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host, Mark. Wherever you are, I hope you are well, and a massive thank you to everyone who's been listening over the month of June. I pre-recorded basically every episode in June. I didn't get to pre-record as many as I wanted to, and obviously it was a difficult time to pre-record because we were just moving into transfer season and it was all exciting, so pre-recording seemed a bit weird when there was, news coming or potentially news coming out all the time. I've been away getting married and on my honeymoon, so that is why I pre-recorded them, but we are back now. We are recording live and responding to news as it comes in, so thank you for all your patience, and thank you Arsenal for, whilst I was away on my honeymoon, really not doing anything and not making any moves particularly at all. But now that I am back, all the news seems to be breaking all at once. It is happening at a rate of knots. We have 3 players, one really, really far along. Looks like it's going to get done. You heard about it at the start and you will have seen the title of this podcast, Christian Nørgaard to Arsenal, £15 million if all the performance-related packages go ahead. That looks like that is going to happen. And I think that is a really good transfer and I'm excited for it. It's not going to win us the title. Okay, it's not going to be the transfer that wins us the title, but I think it is a clever, shrewd and pragmatic transfer. I'm going to talk you through why during this episode. We also have interest in a right-sided centre-back from La Liga and an attacking player from the Premier League. News just breaking this evening, so I'm going to talk about all of them later. If you haven't left a review for Arsenal Unfiltered and you would like to, I really, really appreciate it. Go and find wherever you listen to your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and just leave a 5-star review. That would be super, super helpful. Okay, why does Christian Nørgaard to Arsenal make sense? Let's get started, and I think this comes down to 3 things. 1, style, Christian Nørgaard's style. 2, the opportunities that are available to us, and 3, the cost. I'm going to go through all 3 of those this evening, and I think it's probably worth starting with some of the online reaction, and I've seen a real varied reaction to this. The guys at the Cannon Stats podcast, they've been very positive, and Arsblog pretty positive as well. But then, I've heard Harry from the Chronicles of Aguna really not enthused by this at all, and it's really dividing opinion from people who I think have really solid opinions on Arsenal stuff all the time. I think there are plenty of really, really coherent, clever voices who have very, very nice and positive opinions about Arsenal. Nice and positive is not what I meant. Good and eloquent opinions about Arsenal. And they think things through really well. But all of those people seem to be on a different page about this one. And I'm certainly falling on the side of this is pragmatic, it makes sense, and I'm happy with it. Let's talk about Christian Nørgaard as a player and why I think the comparisons to Jorginho don't really make too much sense. First of all, he is coming in to take the Jorginho role. And when I say the Jorginho role, I mean that number of minutes. I think Jorginho had something like 700, 800 minutes last season. Didn't play much, looked to have physically just gone when he was on the pitch. But I say the Jorginho role not in how he plays, not in the style. Christian Nørgaard is not going to be the new Jorginho when it comes to style. It will be he will be Jorginho's replacement in terms of his hierarchy and where he sits. He is going to come in and be second man to Martin Zubimendi. We know that Martin Zubimendi is all but announced. All of the kind of really in the know people are saying that is basically done. Arsenal are happy. And I think that might be one that goes on the 1st of July when the transfer window reopens. So he will play second fiddle to Martin Zubimendi. We know that, and that's kind of reflected in the fee, £15 million if it's at its maximum. £10 million of the performance-related bonuses don't happen. But you look at Jorginho and you look at Christian Nørgaard, and they couldn't be more different as players. They might play the same position, but actually this is a really different player. It's worth saying that all the stats I'm going to talk about are obviously, they're different because Arsenal play a certain way and Brentford play a certain way. Arsenal have a lot of time with the ball, whereas Brentford, they're a little bit more direct, and Christian Nørgaard is part of that. But I've taken all these percentiles and not compared them to Arsenal squads. I've used the FBref scouting report, and that compares it to UCL, Europa League, and the top 5 leagues. So a really high standard of performers, but that will include plenty of teams who don't have as much possession as Arsenal and don't have much territory as Arsenal. So I think it is a really fair comparison. And Nørgaard's defensive stats are right up there with some of the best. 93rd percentile in shots blocked, 92nd percentile in dribblers challenged, 90th percentile for interceptions. I think that's one really, really key one. I think it is a big enough sample size with the big 5 leagues and the UCL and the UEL to say that is a really impressive set. And you look at his scouting report, his possession stats and the stuff he does with the ball and his passing, he's not going to get anyone up off their seat. That might change at Arsenal. He might be a great passer in a system that doesn't want him to pass like that, or wants him to take really risky passes that aren't necessarily going to come off because he's feeding a Yohan Wissa, who's a brilliant player but not exactly huge. Same with Mbeumo. If he's taking riskier passes to Kai Havertz or cross fingers, touch wood, Benjamin Sesko, those passing numbers might improve and he might have more options, of course, when he comes into Arsenal. His defensive stats might also go down, right? Because he has less of the ball. He has more of the ball, so he has less of that to do. So that could all change when he joins Arsenal. However, I think this is a really good indicator that he's got this in his locker. And for me, where this makes tons and tons of sense is he fits a profile in our squad that we don't necessarily have. And I think it's the man under Declan Rice to do the ball recovery in midfield. And I think it's really, really important to remember that with Jorginho and Partey, you've got 2 really high-quality ball progressors. Really high quality. But you don't have much difference in style. Partey was just a little bit more physical than Jorginho, and maybe played the ball over the top a little bit better, could stride onto the ball a little bit better. But again, they weren't that different. And I think this Nørgaard move makes a ton of sense in the sense that we're going to have Martin Zubimendi, who is very Thomas Partey-like, probably an improvement on Thomas Partey, but again, he's a ball manipulator, he is a passer. He is a player who does that 6 role in its really true sense, and that the kind of modern 6, I should say, and passes the ball brilliantly and does a lot of really good stuff. Nørgaard's a bit more of a destroyer if you look at these stats, and you have a quick look at how he plays for Brentford. I mean, we all remember that tackle he put in on Martinelli. That's not his finest hour, but that's what he is about. He's about kind of destroying, winning the ball back. And he's also a threat in both boxes, which I thought was really interesting. He's 6'1". He's the 85th percentile against all midfielders in those top 5 leagues for non-penalty goals. 99th percentile for defensive penalty area touches and 78th percentile for attacking penalty touches. He wins 62% of his aerials as well. So what Mikel Arteta and Andrea Berta are doing here is they're actually saying, well, if we've got Martin Zubimendi, and I think as well, if we've also got Miles Lewis-Skelly, which great news, he's signed a new 5-year deal, that was announced today as well. Lots of news coming out today. If we've got Zubimendi and we've got Miles Lewis-Skelly, is that enough progression? Do we have enough in that low midfield area? And you could also say Declan Rice, I think his game's improved from that point of view. He can come in and pick the ball up and do a bit of that work. And of course, when you have Ben White as well, he's used to going around the side, but he's very useful for progressing the ball through that kind of middle third and defensive third. Very, very good at that. When you've got all of those players, do you need a second progressor to back up Martin Zubimendi? Or are you looking for someone who might give you something a little bit different? And I started to think about the makeup of the rest of the Arsenal squad. And I think you see this a lot. Left back, we've got Miles Lewis-Skelly, likes to invert, controls the ball, dips his shoulders, not necessarily like maverick in the way he attacks, but really, really clever, fantastic ball retention, and a solid, dependable, kind of reliable figure. versus Calafiori, who's a bit more maverick, a bit more gun-ho, a bit more kind of round the sides and just driving at someone and direct. You could say the same on the right-hand side, Timber and Ben White. Two very, very high-quality players with ever so slightly different profiles. I'm even going to go as far as to say Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus. Obviously, Jesus is injured. It doesn't really affect us for this coming season, but when they were building the squad, Kai Havertz, big, can move in and around people, uses his body really, really well. Not necessarily, a lethal finisher, but finds great positions. Gabriel Jesus is a little bit more of a dribbler, a little bit more kind of chaos mode, as you would say. A little less tall, a little less physical, and a little bit more kind of what he does with his feet is how he causes threat. There's multiple spots in this Arsenal team. Let's go one more, just quickly. Declan Rice and Mikel Merino. Declan Rice, originally a 6, all about that kind of physical ability, can run and run and run in that left 8 position. Mikel Merino, a little bit more of a late arriver, clever guy, not so brilliant physically as Declan Rice is, but really, really good movement, really, really intelligent when he goes into the box. And I think this is something Arsenal and Mikel Arteta are looking to do more and more. Have two high-quality players in both positions, but they do things slightly differently. So that's what I think we're trying to do, this style change here. Is we're trying to get a different use out of the 6. Mikel Arteta doesn't just want to have ball controllers and ball manipulators in there. He wants to have someone who can, like I said, I think I said this before, maybe he's going to do some of Rice's ball recovery work from 6 rather than 8 to allow Rice to have a day off. And maybe this isn't just about 6s and 8s and comparing Jorginho and Nørgaard or Zubimendi and Partey. And it's about kind of going, okay, so where are we getting these qualities from in the middle of the park? Miles Lewis-Skelly has come in. He can invert, and he will give us some of that progressive quality. So maybe we can go with a Nørgaard and Miles Lewis-Skelly combination at left back and 6 for a game, and allow Rice to sit down for a bit, because Nørgaard's there to do that ball recovery work, and it's not necessarily about a 6 or an 8, but it's about the qualities Mikel Arteta wants in the midfield. He will also give you a very different thing than Jorginho. Jorginho sometimes, perhaps not so much last season, but the season before, would come on to replace Thomas Partey when Thomas Partey's legs were going, and we would use him to control games at the end, to shut the game out by keeping the ball. Perhaps this is a completely different thing altogether, and actually we're saying we're going to shut the game down by just having a brute in there who's going to do great defensive work and win the ball back and do tons of ball recovery. So look, I think for me, the main reason why Nørgaard to Arsenal does make sense is because actually we are seeing across the whole of the Arsenal squad this kind of preference, let's say, for two high-quality players with different styles. And that's why, I'm not sure, this kind of comes on to the opportunity thing. A lot of people are saying, well, Jorginho and Partey are better as a 2 than Zubimendi and Nørgaard. Well, maybe. Maybe if you look at it just very rudimentarily in terms of the two players. But let's think about this, right? One, Jorginho as a backup, that kind of player does not roll around every so often. The fact that we got him out of Chelsea for 12 million quid and the quality and the experience that he has and gave us for many seasons now, you're not going to find that every transfer window. You're just not. So it's a little bit redundant to compare Nørgaard to Jorginho, because I think that Jorginho situation was so unique. To pull such an experienced winner out of Chelsea for such a low fee was, it was a very, very strange scenario, and it worked really well for us. You're not going to find that all the time. So let's not be comparing Nørgaard to Jorginho. One, because Jorginho, that was a very unique set of circumstances, but two, I think it's going to be a completely different style. Is there someone better out there at a reasonable price? Now, Lucien Agume from, I believe, Sevilla has been talked about, but I present to you, in the case of saying don't go and get Lucien Agume, I present to you Albert Sambi Lokonga, a player with tons and tons of potential, a young player who was wanted all around Europe. Lots of big clubs wanted him. We got him. We weren't able to play him. He didn't play enough. He got overwhelmed when he did come and play, and he is now just injured all the time, never really performed on his loan spells. We don't want another one of them. And in this season, where everyone's saying we need to win now, okay, and a lot of people are looking at this Nørgaard transfer and going, well, this Nørgaard transfer doesn't set us up to be a Premier League winning team. I get that, But is there a signing out there to play backup six that does? Like, how often does your backup six win you the Premier League? Very rarely. Very rarely. So we've got to analyse this transfer for what it is, not for what it isn't. We wish that we, if Sesko had come in a week ago, we'd be looking at this Nørgaard transfer and going, brilliant, this is great. Really, really happy that we've got a defensive player in who can cover some of those spots that we've lost. But because we don't have Sesko in, we're looking at it and going, well, we're not going to win the Premier League with this transfer. And we're kind of confusing the order that the transfers are coming in at with what the transfer actually is. Okay? Look, Nørgaard is as close to ready as you will get. He's experienced in the Premier League. He was a captain at Brentford. He's got some really, really good stats. And really importantly as well, we can't allow Thomas Partey to hold us to ransom. So clearly Arsenal went in with the preference of keeping Thomas Partey. And I have to say, from a footballing perspective only, that made loads of sense to me. Keep the player that knows the system and drop him down a little bit in terms of his minutes and his status in the squad. However, that has to come with a wage reduction or at least a wage maintenance. If Thomas Partey was asking for more money plus a signing on fee, this is all just not going to work. He can't hold the club to ransom. And I think that's the final reason. Cost is a big thing for me on this. If you look around, and I'm going to use Agume again, I don't mean to pick on the kid because I don't really know him too well. I don't know how he plays, but I'm just going to use him. He would have cost, I think, the rumours are around 25 million quid. Okay? So that is quite a large outlay, and that would have been without wages. To do that kind of money, on a young player who isn't going to necessarily be a starter, might sacrifice a Rodrigo, a Sesko, a Gyökeres. It might get in the way of some of those transfers, and we don't want that to happen, of course. So the only way you can do this, right, for me, is either you keep Thomas Partey and he takes a downgrade, which it sounds like he wasn't going to accept, or you go and get someone like Christian Nørgaard. Christian Nørgaard, who is a captain, experienced in the Premier League. And I've just done some simple calculations. Very, very simple. The fee for Thomas Partey would obviously be 0. But the wages, let's say he wanted a 10% raise. Okay, 10% raise. He was on 200,000. That would put him on £220,000 a week. And I've put both of these players on a 3-year contract. Because I think it would have been quite likely to do a 2+1 for Thomas Partey, or Nørgaard coming in on a 3-year contract as well. Makes sense to me. Arsenal probably want him on 2 years, but he'll want to protect his career. That puts Thomas Partey at £34 million as an overall package. So even if Christian Nørgaard doubles his wages, goes to £80,000 a week at Arsenal, and we pay the full whack of 15 million quid, that is 27 million. Overall, the difference is 6.84 million when you kind of factor in all the combinations of signing Christian Nørgaard with the full fee and doubling his wages for 3 years, compared to a 10% rise for Thomas Partey. That 6 million quid difference is really, really important when it comes to looking at, can we get Rodrigo in? Can we give him the extra bit of money or signing on fee that he wants? Can we get Sesko over the line? All of that's really, really important. So all of that to say, right, Nørgaard's going to give us something different, something that we didn't have in the Jorginho and Partey combination, which for me, that's really good. And we've got to remember that he is bringing qualities, not just position. So he might bring qualities that allow us to rest Declan Rice a little bit more. I don't see many better players out there available at a certain price bracket, and some of the other options that I've spoken about, I just don't back how that would work as a backup six. And that cost between Thomas Partey and Christian Nørgaard is really, really important. It is. We're talking 6 million quid. I get it. And it's all hypothesized, and it might not be those numbers, but as a worked example, it shows how very, very quickly those wages can add up and could really make the difference between those signings at the front end of the pitch. And if those signings were already in, I think we'd be viewing this Christian Nørgaard deal very, very differently. So for me, my conclusion is this is a really smart, pragmatic transfer. It makes a lot of sense. We just can't judge it, as, Jorginho's a better player than Nørgaard, so this is a downgrade. That Jorginho transfer was so unique. You are not going to find those players all the time at that price bracket. And if that's the price bracket that you want to shop in for your backup six, which, by the way, I fully support not spending tons and tons of money on a backup six Really, really important position. So you're not going to get Zubimendi out of the team all that much, right? It's not going to be a rotational position. I've really fully support that. If you're shopping at this price bracket, is there much better than Christian Nørgaard? I'm really not sure I could name many players who I think would come in and do a better job, who is as experienced as him, who is a captain for a Premier League team, and who gives us something different. On the flip side of that, I do agree. I don't think this is the signing that I wanted to be talking about when I came back from my honeymoon. I wanted to be talking about Sesko. I wanted to be talking about the Rodrigo deal advancing and all of that sort of stuff. That's not happened. And there is frustration. And if you have frustration, I understand that. We've seen Liverpool go out for Florian Wirtz. We've seen Manchester City go out for Reinders and a couple of other fellas. So, I understand that frustration. I'm not frustrated yet because I think I will only be frustrated at the point where I see pre-season photos without a striker in them. That's kind of my cut-off line. If I see the guys are in Southeast Asia and Sesko or Gyökeres or whoever it is not there, then I will get frustrated because I think we've had long enough. However, Arsenal are not working to the timeline that we want them to work to. They are going to work to the timeline that best suits them, financial implications, and they don't have to react to Liverpool and Manchester City making signings. They have to get a striker in before pre-season. So, I think that's why some of the frustration with this transfer has come out, because they're doing things on a different timeline than we would do them. Nørgaard, it's sensible, it's pragmatic, I like it. It gives us something different style-wise. And looking around at the market, it makes a lot of sense. I've rambled on for 21 minutes about Christian Nørgaard, so I'm going to move on quickly to some other news. Like I mentioned before, Miles Skelly signed a new deal, 5-year deal. Fantastic news that is done. I don't think it was really ever in doubt. I'm pretty certain we had a bit of news around that many weeks ago. And it was all a case of just announcing it. Arsenal have announced it with a particularly emotional kind of video to go along with it. Go and check that out. It's just good to get it done. Gabriel's done, Miles Skelly's done. Let's get Ethan done. Let's get Bukayo done, and let's get William Saliba done. So much work to do this summer, but Andrea Berta is starting. It is going on. Obviously, Zubimendi we've spoken about in this episode. We've got Kepa pretty much done as well, and it looks like Nørgaard's going to be pretty much done. So that's 2 contracts out of 5, and probably 3 signings out of 5. Yeah, wow, that is a big list for Andrea Berta. One of the other signings that we are looking at is Christian Mosquera from Valencia. He is a Spain under-21 international. I think he's currently playing in the under-21 tournament, and Arsenal have really significant interest. This has come out today as well, and this totally makes sense to me. I'm going to be hands up honest. I know nothing about the player. Really haven't watched much of Valencia at all recently, but it sounds like he has had tons of experience for a 20-year-old player. 90 first-team appearances already in his short career as a young man. So that's really, really impressive at 20 years old. And for me, this is a lower priority signing, but it is still an important one. Cover for Saliba. That's basically what this is. I've seen people say, oh, that's Kivior out then. I don't view it like that at all. I think this becomes sort of like we're paired up at this point. We'll have Timber and White at right back. We'll have Saliba and Mosquera, if this goes through, at right centre-back. We'll have Gabriel and Kivior at left centre-back, and we'll have Miles Skelly and Calafiori at left-back. That will complete that kind of 8-man midfield. Tomiyasu will probably move on at some point when he can get fit and Arsenal can kind of get him out the door, which is a real shame. But this interest in Mosquera, I'm welcome to it, because I think we saw at the end of the season Saliba really start to drop his level, just had to play too much football. Same with David Raya, those two were involved in a couple of incidents. So I'm okay with that. It's not my priority, but it's nice to see that we are being linked with people and being linked with people more and more. I just want us to get one of those attacking signings over the line. And talking of attacking signings, Football London are reporting today that Arsenal are kind of back in with interest for Eze. Now, it is a little bit kind of, well, yeah, isn't everyone interested in one of the best players in the Premier League if he becomes available? It's a weird one for me, this, because it makes a lot of sense to bring Eze back to Arsenal. He was in the academy. We let him go, and he's gone on to have a really good career. But Crystal Palace look like they might be losing Mark Gahey already. And if they lose Mark Gahey and Eberechi Eze in the same window at the time that they've just got European football, God willing that all of that stuff with Lyon doesn't make an issue. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast going on there. To lose both of their star men would be a real blow for Palace, and I'm not sure they'd let that happen. The Football London report is kind of a little bit kind of soft. It doesn't say Arsenal have approached. It doesn't say that Arsenal are speaking with the camp or anything like that. It just says they're interested as they assess many attacking options throughout the summer. It's one of those reports that I think it makes a lot of sense that Arsenal would be in for a player like that, but it's not concrete enough to get excited about just yet. So that's that. I'm really excited to be back. We're going to do another podcast on the weekend, and then I'm thinking about a little challenge in July for the podcast. Stay tuned for what that might be. But yeah, Christian Nørgaard to Arsenal in my mind does make sense. Miles Lewis-Skelly has signed another contract. Great news. 5 more years of MLS. We have some interest in another right-sided centre-back, and we maybe have some very light interest in Eze. But Andrea Berta, I'm pleading with you for the sanity of everyone on the internet. Go and get Benjamin Sesko or Victor Gyökeres and get him over the line. Get them in the door so we can all start calming down about this summer. Like I say, I'm not panicked yet, but we need them in the door. We need them in the door for the first day of pre-season. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Like I said, if you've enjoyed this podcast or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, please do consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts from. It really, really helps me grow the podcast, and I want to get this into the ears of as many Arsenal fans as possible. I will speak to you more regularly from now on. Like I said, you'll hear one on the weekend. So all that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.